Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the ROS Media channel. My name is Andy. I'm in charge of the media platform here at the Republic of Old Souls. Once again, I'm joined with my good friend Ian Clifford, who is the founder and president here at the Republic of Old Souls and also responsible for the protocols. If you have been following our content, if you've been watching some of our videos, if you are a member here on the platform, you'll know that our flagship is the Monopoly Game Changer protocol. That is a series of individual protocols that are all linked together that work to create not just freedom for you, but also protection as well from the control system around us. But today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be peeling back the curtain on possibly one of the biggest deceptions of the modern era. Before I dig into what that is, let's make sure that we are live across all of our platforms. If you're watching us on Facebook, we're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, we're live on X. We're about to go live right now on Instagram. So let's do that. So if you want to join us on Instagram, you should be able to do that right now. And then if you are joining us on Telegram, let's go live there too, so that you can benefit from watching us on our Winning at Monopoly Telegram channel. I'll just make sure that that's gone live. And then we will dive right into the subject matter as well. There we go. So we're live on all of those channels, about 8 different channels for you guys to watch. So lovely to have you with us. Ian, really excited to dig into this one. Today we're going to talk about, like I said, probably the biggest deception ever, which is this jurisdictional trap of agency, often misunderstood. A lot of people think that this is an absolute curse, whereas we're saying there's a silver lining to this. It's also a gift. So we're going to talk about how the living acts as surety for the birth certificate construct decedent estate. We're going to talk about why traditional freedom movements fail miserably in court when it comes to this, because there's some misunderstandings there, how the state treats your birth certificate like an abandoned corporate business, but more importantly, the exact protocols within the Monopoly Game Changer to fix your status from a helpless debtor to a powerful creditor status as well, and what you can do with that moving forwards. So if you want to know how to do that, how to legally shield your assets, stop playing defense, stick around, because we've also got an exclusive at the end of today's session. We're going to give you guys the opportunity to join the Monopoly Game Changer with a special promotion. I'll talk about that in more detail towards the end of today's live. But for now, let's dig in. So I think the best place to start is this double persona, you know, how the system treats us versus how we potentially view ourselves, you know. So this is the big question, isn't it? It's the, wait, who am I kind of question. For anybody listening who thinks that their name on a piece of paper is just, well, them, I guess, then could you just break this down for them simply, Ian? What's the difference between me as a living, breathing human and this artificial person or corporate entity that you say the state creates when a birth is actually registered?
Well, it's this foundational to understanding how the game of Monopoly is played. You basically got things of substance. So the living man, woman, the living soul is of substance. And then you've got artificial constructs, which are things like the person, the citizen, what a lot of people in the freedom movements call the straw man. You've got corporations. These are artificial constructs. You've got trusts, artificial constructs, foundations. All of these things are artificial constructs. And what is going on here is that the living soul is a player moving around what I describe as the Monopoly Board of Commerce, the player piece, which is the artificial construct that was created to basically enable the game of Monopoly to be played. And this was created, this artificial construct, from the birth certificate registration, which, you know, a lot of people have focused on this. I've watched and I've read and I've listened to people talk about their theories about what the birth certificate is, how they believe it works, what you can do with it. And I think a lot of people are in agreement that it's not them, so those that have started to research this subject have probably concluded that they are not the birth certificate construct. They've realised that the name on the birth certificate construct is written out quite often in capital letters. They've realised that is, a pretty big giveaway. That's a corporate entity, an artificial construct. They've realised that the date of the registration of the birth certificate is not the day they were born. If you look at a birth certificate, you'll see invariably the certificate registration date is different from the day of the baby's the day the baby's born. And then they probably realise that there is a reference number on the birth certificate, which is unique. So you put the name, what a lot of people would call the surname or the family name, and the certificate number and the date. You've got three unique identifiers there that illustrate that it's not of substance. It's an artificial construct. It's no real difference from if you register a company. You get a registration date, you get a name of a company, and you've got basically you've got a date, you've got a name, and you've got a reference number for the company. So it's very, very similar to forming a company. And of course, why do people form companies? They form companies because they want to play Monopoly. They want the company to play on the Monopoly board. So this is what's going on. You've got substance, living men and women who don't step onto the Monopoly board, can't step on the Monopoly board. It's artificial. Okay. It would be impossible. It's like saying you could, you're it's like a hologram. You can't touch it. You can put your hand straight through it. You can look at it and it looks real, but it's artificial. And therefore the whole of the game of commerce is being played on this artificial board, which when you then realize that, and I've joined all of these dots together and it makes absolute perfect sense to me. When you join together the next dot, that is what is happening on this Monopoly board, all these artificial constructs playing the game of Monopoly, what are they using to play it with? Well, they're using money of account, which is not got any substance either. It's accounting ledgers. So very similar to playing Monopoly with Monopoly money. What we all do all around the world is play the game of Monopoly with fiat currency, the dollar, the euro, the yen, the pound, the whatever. All of these currencies are artificial constructs as well, because they're not actually backed by anything of any substance. So consistent with the artificial construct of the Monopoly board, you can't use substance-based money very easily on that Monopoly board. You can use it away from the board, but you can't use it on the board. It's not going to be recognized on the artificial board. So the next step is, in the journey of understanding how this is being put together is, well, how is it that, if you're pulled in by the police because they say you were speeding, or you went through a stoplight and, or you did something which caused you to be pulled in, the very first question they're going to ask you is, what's your name? And of course, most of us who don't realise what's going on will say the name on the birth certificate because that's the only name that we know of. We don't say, oh, yeah, thanks for asking, my name's Ian. No, I mean, 20, 30 years ago, if I was pulled in by the police before I knew what was going on with this artificial construct, framework, I would have said, my name's Ian Stamp, which was the name on the birth certificate 30 years ago, 20 years ago, probably. I wouldn't have said, "Oh, thanks for asking. My name's Ian," because I've been programmed to say the family name, which of course most people have been programmed in the same way. So, what is that? What is that name representing? Well, the name on the birth certificate is like the name of the company. It's the name of the artificial construct, which has been registered to the state. So, the next question is, well, why would they want to register the birth certificate construct? And the answer to that is pretty simple, really. It gives them control over the living soul. It gives them a control over the player piece, the artificial construct, but it then enables them to link the artificial construct directly because it's registered into the artificial system. It later will get a social insurance number, which is also part of the artificial game of Monopoly. But what they've done is they've linked it from the moment the birth certificate is registered to the baby. The baby will grow up unless it doesn't survive. If it survives, it becomes an adult, and then it starts to hold itself out as if it were the birth certificate construct, and that forms the agency, which is what a lot of people aren't realizing. You don't get a contract in the post when you get to age 18 that says, hey, you've got an option here. You can operate as the agent for the birth certificate construct, and here are all the consequences of that. Or you can opt out of that if you want, and you can just be you. Nobody sends you that contract because it's implied that you are going to be, if you haven't already, you're going to operate as the agent. And they want you to operate as the agent because the agency makes you liable for everything that the artificial birth certificate construct does when it's playing Monopoly or when it's the player piece moving around the Monopoly board. So it's a very subtle way of making the living soul responsible for everything that is going on the Monopoly board, this artificial game, which of course, if you then extrapolate it out further and say, well, there's no money of substance, there's only money of account, then what is this artificial Monopoly board? What does it look like? What are the components of it?
Yeah.
Let's break it down. Well, then you realize that it's all operating in a bankruptcy. The whole Monopoly board worldwide is operating in bankruptcy, and it's all based on debt. So, not only is it artificial, but it's the inverse of what people think it is. The assets are actually debts. Everything that people think is an asset on the Monopoly board is actually a debt, and they don't own it either, because the fact that the player piece, the artificial construct, is registering a quotable title over things like cars, houses, businesses, investment accounts, bank accounts, anything that is being used on the artificial Monopoly board. It's not the living soul that has the account or has the asset, has the house, car, business, investment account. No, it is the artificial construct that has that account. And of course, that's already been registered to the state. The artificial construct's bank account, you could argue, belongs to the state. The artificial construct's car, house, business, investment account is basically owned by the state because it's been registered to the state, because all of those things are registered, and the name on the registration is the birth certificate construct, which is also registered to the state. So the living soul is liable for everything on the Monopoly board, but doesn't actually own anything, and nor does the artificial construct. So it's a massive deception, which I'm sure a lot of people are beginning to realize how clever it is. Certainly, it certainly works very well for controlling the living soul's behaviour, because you can't really engage in society unless you play the game of Monopoly, or you break away from the game of Monopoly and you form your own community and you operate, with your own community in your own way. Well, that's not very easy to do either. It's what we are planning to do, but it isn't very easy to pull it off.
It's so woven, like you said, into society, isn't it, that it's very difficult to function without that agency and without using that. But as we've often spoken about, there is a way to use that agency in our favor. Before we kind of dig into that, Ian, I want to talk about this ownership illusion as well, because, this again, it's a deception, it's a trap. When people say, well, I own my house, I am mortgage free, what we're saying here is, well, no, you don't. We're pointing back to things like, as you mentioned, that 1933, HJR 192, the bankruptcy. If we don't truly own our houses or cars, then in simple terms, who does?
Well, again, the whole game of Monopoly is artificial. So the assets that a lot of people will, refer you to if you ask, and I was doing this for years. I was a wealth manager, so I would sit down with my clients and go through their assets and liabilities. So yeah, what assets have you got? Oh, I've got a car. Maybe I've got more than one. I've got a boat. I've got, maybe if I'm really rich, I've got a plane. I've got a business. I've got a house. I've got more than one. I've got investments, all of these stocks and shares and bonds and cryptocurrencies and other things that I've got. And I've got money in the bank. I've got all these accounts over here with all these balances in there. And, a lot of my clients were ultra high net worth. So you add all those things up and it's, wow, you're somebody with, maybe over £100 million worth of assets if you add them all up. In reality, that is worth zero, because breaking it down into its component parts, I've got a car. Have you really? It's registered to the state. You get to use it. So all you really have is a equitable title to it. You can use it, but it doesn't, and you can sell that equitable title to somebody else who can then use it. But you're not actually owning the car itself. The same with the house. The house is registered. Even if you don't have a mortgage, it's still registered on a land registry. Even worse if there's a mortgage. Then you say, okay, well, I've got a business. Surely that's got to be owned by me. Well, the business is registered to the state, which is how they get you to pay taxes and things on the revenues of the business. And then you say, well, okay, fine. I can accept that I don't have a car, I don't have a house, I don't have a business, but surely I've got my investments, haven't I? I've got these stocks and shares, I've got my investment portfolios, I've got this cryptocurrency. Surely I have those, don't I? Well, look into those when you'll find out that all the stocks and shares are registered to the banks. They've got the legal title ownership of the instruments, because all of these things are called financial instruments. And then you look at cryptocurrency and say, well, surely, Ian, I must have cryptocurrency because that's been introduced, since 2008 as a way of people getting out of the system. So surely, if I've got cryptocurrency, that can't be owned by the state. Well, it depends how you hold it, but if you're going to liquidate it because you want to use it for some reason, then as soon as you try and liquidate it, you're going to go into fiat currency, and then you're going to try and use fiat currency, which again is because look at the bank account that you're going to liquidate the cryptocurrency into, and the bank account is registered under the name of the birth certificate construct, which of course is registered to the state. So the bank account and the balance in it doesn't belong to the living soul either. It's registered through the artificial construct of the birth certificate, and it's a debt. It's not even a credit. Everything in bank accounts is negative because everything is debt, and debt is a negative value, and it's all part of the bankruptcy. So all of these things which look like assets are actually registered to the state, and the state is using those assets, including the energy of the people, which we'll come back to in a minute, as collateral to underpin the bankruptcy. So if you're going to play Monopoly and you want to control, if you're one of the original creditors and you want to control the world's population, one of the smartest things they ever did was make the whole Monopoly board bankrupt, because then the creditors can control the debtors.
Yeah.
Debtors are always going to be paying to the creditors. And that is how the control system really works.
Yeah.
Yes, you've got digital ID. Yes, you've got law, legal, and all those things. But I argue probably the biggest control system is the money system. Because if you don't use money, how can you operate? You can't really do much without using money. And of course, the money system is controlled by the creditors, because they invented and constructed the money of account system. The original creditors, the banks that form the Federal Reserve, put together the Federal Reserve Act and were instrumental in enforcing the bankruptcy of the United States, and then all the other nations followed suit. So all of these things are tied together. They all fit together to basically provide the creditors, the original creditors, with a control system which is next level genius, I have to say, on every level. Whilst people have no idea
Exactly.
how it works,
Yeah.
they are happy. You know, when Klaus Schwab years ago said, you know, you'll own nothing and be happy, he wasn't talking about some date in the future. He was talking about it's already happening now. You own nothing now. And some of you are happy, some of you aren't. But you know, he wasn't talking about some magic event or some tipping point event in the future. They already had set it up years and years ago that you're already owning nothing now. And many people are happy owning nothing, but thinking that they own things. And I'm not saying that everyone should, you know, go into deep depression about the realization of how this system works, but knowledge is power, and that's why we do these interviews, so that we can show you if you're not comfortable owning nothing and having no real control over what you do on the Monopoly board, then that's what we're showing people and facilitating their path to freedom through knowing how to play the game a bit smarter than they currently are playing it.
Yeah, agreed. It always reminds me of the film The Matrix as well. There's a scene in that film where there's one of the guys, I think his name is Cypher, I'm not quite sure. It's an old film now, isn't it? It's been going for many, many years. But there's one of the team double crosses the rest of the team. And he actually requests to be put back into the Matrix because he loves the illusion. He doesn't want freedom. He's not really of the right mindset for that. So there's going to be people like that in the world. The vast majority of people may just be quite happy with the illusion that they own what they own and that they just continue to play this game. But for those of you who do think, like Ian said, if you think that something's not right, something's a bit off, and it's always been nagging at you, then this is the content for you. And what I really want to dig into next is, you know, how not just how we sort of sign away our wealth and our rights through this illusion, but there's many people around the world who also feel that something's not right, also feel that something's off, also understand that there is this duality going on, but that they're approaching it in the wrong way. So I want to talk a little bit about the sovereign and the freedom movement that is out there at the moment. But what I thought it would be good to do today as well, Ian, because we are live, we've got some really great comments and questions coming in from people who are watching us on socials right now. And while we're on this subject matter of everything being inverted, everything being debt, we've had a question come in from Vance on YouTube who says, if all debt is a negative value, where is the positive value? So maybe we could just cover a couple of these questions before we move on. You know, I want to make sure that people understand how this works. So if all debt is the negative value, where's the positive value? That's what Vance is asking.
Well, it's a great question, and one that everybody should be asking is, well, if it's all debt, then who is the debt owed to? Well, in a bankruptcy, the debtor always owes the creditor, and there might be more than one creditor. Well, in this artificial game of Monopoly, the creditors were originally the bloodline family banks that form the Federal Reserve, that still have ownership of the Federal Reserve. If you'll notice, if you look into it, which many people have done, it's not federal and it hasn't got a reserve. But it's called the Federal Reserve, and it's actually owned by some of the original bloodline banker families that have engineered this money of account system. So when you say, okay, I get that, so it's bankrupt, there's creditors, there's the original creditors, which were the banks, the bloodline banking families. Surely, you know, is it all of this debt? There's hundreds of trillions of debt, which, if you look on the world debt clock, you know, that's what you'll see on there is an ever increasing number. Of course, it's a negative. It gets more and more negative every moment of every day. Well, is it all owed to the bloodline banking families? And the answer to that is no, because the way it works is that 97% of the money of account is actually created through the signature of the world population. So every time we, operating as the living soul that is using our energy, transferring our energy through a signature of the birth certificate construct, which is a banking entity, by the way, which is very, very important if you're going to play Monopoly. You can only really play Monopoly if the birth certificate construct can issue negotiable instruments, which is the promises to pay in the future. And you're doing that through a relationship with a bank somewhere, where the banks are operating as nominees for the birth certificate construct and holding the energy as nominees, fiduciaries. So 97% of that world debt is actually owed back to the living men and women, the living souls. But the problem is, how do they get it back? You know, they can't go into the system and say, well, there's hundreds of trillions of debt here, and I've just realized that some of it's owed back to me. I want it back. I want give me my money back, basically. There isn't any mechanism for the living souls to get their actual credit back. But there is a way of them getting taxes back. So the debt, to answer the question, is owed back to the people, 97% of it. I've written numerous research papers breaking this down. You can't get it back, but what you can get is the taxes that the banks pay for the use of it. And that is the game changer, which perhaps we'll come back to that. So yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Who's it owed to? It's owed to the people, 97%. There's no mechanism to get it back, but you can get the taxes back. And I want to introduce, the notion of what taxes really are, because it's another pivotal piece of information. If I had a car, and forget the fact that it's already registered to the state, but let's just imagine that I've got a car, and I want to lend it out to people to use. I'm going to start a little business. I'm going to lend my car out. People can come and use it. I'm expecting them to pay me for the use of the car. Yeah,
Of course.
rent. If I've got a house and I want to rent it out to a tenant, I'm going to expect them to pay to rent the house. So let's take that one step further and say, well, if we agree, and I think a lot of us do now, that human energy is backing 97% of the money of account, when the banks use it as nominees, isn't it like somebody using your car or somebody using your house? Wouldn't you be expecting rent? And isn't rent tax? Because the creditors are charging a tax for the use of their collateral. So you see, all of us have got this abandoned tax that we don't know we can claim, and it's rent. It's rent for using our energy. The system, the monopoly board itself, is using our human energy all the time, and it's being used predominantly by the banks, who are nominees and they of course do very well using human energy. They love to use the human energy. They've got a whole very, very smart system of how they use it, and without human energy on money of account, they couldn't do what they do. So it's a system that is next level genius. You can't claim the debt back, but you can claim rent on your energy, and that is tax. And that is the major breakthrough that I think a lot of people are beginning to realize is the big opportunity. I was looking at some papers this morning. One of our members sent, very well-meaning, saying, court cases are securities, and can't you, Ian, can you find a way of recouping the court cases as securities? Well, I'd already looked into this before. A, court cases aren't securities, and B, even if they were, you can't recoup the security, but you can redirect the taxes on securities that you have created as providing your signature credit energy to create the promise to pay.
Excellent. No problem, Vance. I'm glad that we've answered that for you. So thank you for your questions. Guys, keep your questions coming in. If you've got the odd question, what we want is when we're delivering this information, and Ian delivering the technical side of this information, if you don't understand something, then by all means ask a question. We want you to be clear on how this works. We've noticed over the years there is a definitive knowledge gap between where we are at as a nation here at the Republic of Old Souls versus where our members are at from an educational standpoint. It's all there, but I understand that not, a lot of it is technical. So if you want an explanation in more layman terms, Ian will be happy to deliver that for you. So kind of going back to what you said, Ian, about this rent, and the car analogy, think of it this way, guys, and I've often said this on some of our other calls. This tax that's owed back to you on your energy, your signature credit energy, and we're going to dig into the Monopoly Game Changer at the end and sort of give you this silver lining, not just that the agency is a trap and a curse, but that there is something that you can really use in the positive and benefit from this. Think of it this way, going back to Ian's car analogy. If you did have a car and Ian was saying, well, if I'm renting that car out, I would expect to be paid a hire charge or a rental charge on the vehicle. But on the flip side, what's actually happening to you all right now, to all of us, is that you've taken your car to a garage, to a valet service, and you're about to go on holiday for a mighty long time, could be a long business trip, and you've paid the valet service to look after your car. While you're away, they're renting your car out, they're making money off the back of it, while still charging you a parking fee. That is what's going on here. So you as a creditor have the ability to reclaim those taxes back that are owed to you. And we're going to talk about that at the end. Before we get into that, I really want to just touch on this freedom movement, Flory, and why these sovereign arguments fail and how the courts just turn you into a rebel trustee. There's a lot of groups out there. There's a lot of free men on the land, sovereign citizens who walk into courtrooms shouting about their constitutional rights or declaring, "I am a living man." Why do these emotional arguments constantly backfire and land people in trouble?
Well, the problem is that some of the argument is correct. The living soul is separate from the artificial construct. And that's where a lot of people in the freedom movements have got it right. But then what they then do is they go down three three pathways that I've identified and seen a lot of times. The first one is, I'm not the birth certificate construct, therefore I have constitutional rights, and depending on which country that's in, it's the Bill of Rights, or it's the Magna Carta, or it's some other constitutional framework, and therefore, if I'm called into a court case as the defendant, well, I'm not the defendant. The birth certificate construct is the defendant, and I have constitutional rights. Go and look at the Magna Carta, go and look at the Bill of Rights, go and look at the US Constitution and any other constitutional documents, of which there are many. And basically, the court has no jurisdiction over me, the living soul, because I'm real and the artificial construct is artificial. And I'm choosing not to play the game. I don't want to be known as the birth certificate construct, and I don't want to have any liability, because I'm over here as a living man, and the artificial construct isn't me. We've already established that. And they think that that's enough to avoid liability. That's the constitutional argument. And then you've got the, well, actually, I'm over here. I'm not going to worry about the Constitution. I'm part of God. I'm this divine spirit that, is only listens to God's law. Or the blue law, or the royal law. So again, I'm over here. I'm part of divinity. I'm a spark of energy from the whole, and you can't touch me because I'm not that birth certificate construct. It's very similar to the constitutional argument. It differs in that they're not invoking the Constitution as their protection, their shield. They're invoking God as their shield to protect them. So that's the second one, and there's all manner of derivatives and variations on that. And then you've got the next one, which is, well, okay, fine. I'm not the birth certificate construct, and the birth certificate construct is registered to the state, and the birth certificate construct, everything it does, it needs to have a contract to be liable. So again, I'm here. I'm a living soul. Show me the contract, basically. If the government is taxing me, well, show me the contract that I ever signed up for. If I'm in a court case because somebody's attacking the birth certificate construct, I'm not the birth certificate construct, and there's no contract. I never signed up for paying the council tax or paying any kind of tax, or that piece of legislation that that I'm being accused of breaching. I never signed up for it. Where's the contract? So then you've got the those that believe that if there's no contract, there's no liability. Well, that's fundamentally flawed as well. And the reason why all of those three and all the derivatives of those three are fundamentally flawed is because of agency. The living man, woman, living soul is an agent for the birth certificate construct, not because I say so, and not because, others, the judge might say so, although they invariably don't say it because they don't really want to explain it. But it is, in substance, it is the case. If you hold yourself out, which is a term in the law, as the birth certificate construct, if you use the birth certificate construct on the monopoly board itself, which of course nearly everybody does, when bank accounts, the name of the bank account is in the name of the birth certificate construct, the driving license, the passport, the investment accounts, the house, the business, everything. You're using that birth certificate construct, benefiting from using it, whilst at the same time saying, I'm not that birth certificate. I can't be held liable for anything that's going on with that birth certificate construct. So it's like the old saying, can you really have your cake and eat it? You either are or you're not the agent for the birth certificate construct. And they've tricked us all into becoming the agent. And then if you go one step further, well, what actually is going on with this agency? If you look at the birth certificate construct, and I think we can all agree it's an artificial construct, it's actually an estate. Well, a lot of people are going to say, well, what is an estate? Well, basically an estate is a trust. A trust where you've got various players or parties or titles that create trusts. And this trust was created by your mum and dad. And basically the trust is then viewed as an estate, because an estate, like a trust, holds things. So in the estate, you might have heard the term, people say, oh, in my estate, I've got all this stuff, land and investments and things of this type. When somebody dies, there is a probate of the estate. Yeah, because basically it's a trust. So if you look at what's going on, the living soul, the living man, woman, is not the birth certificate construct, but they occupy the office of the decedent estate, the artificial construct. Well, the office is an artificial. It's an artificial construct of its own. You may have heard the term the office of the president, the office of the prime minister. Every title has an office, which is also an artificial construct. So the living soul, without knowing it, is operating as the agent for the birth certificate construct, but also occupies the office of the birth certificate construct as a decedent estate, as the executor de son tort, Latin for the executor of all of the wrongs. And this is very, very important, because if you go round holding yourself out as if you were the birth certificate construct, which of course you're not, and then you operate as the living soul in the office as the executor de son tort, when you turn up in a court case and the judge is looking at maybe you've put an argument forward, hey, I'm not the birth certificate construct, I'm over here with my constitutional rights, or I'm over here with my blue law, the royal law, under God's law. You can't have any jurisdiction over me because I'm with God and you're, over there somewhere down way below me and all that kind of thing. The judge is going to be looking at you thinking, well, hold on a minute. Not only are you the agent for the birth certificate construct, but you've been holding yourself out and you're operating as the executor de son tort of the decedent estate. So have you got any rights? No. Not zero. So you see, they've created this scenario where people who don't understand what's happened, they have lost all their rights because of what they've been doing. Not what they say, not what they put on a bit of paper, not what they might send away to some, some declaration or whatever it might be, or some, UCC one filing or whatever they're doing. No, because of what they do, the substance of what they do. They are operating as an agent. They are operating as the in the office of the executive dissenter, and their actions, the old saying, your actions speak louder than your words. So, if you are, if the system, the courts, the judiciary are looking at you, they know that you have no rights. They know that you are the agent. They know that you are operating in the office of the executive dissenter. So this is why people don't win. All sorts of people think that they can get around this system by just saying, "Oh, I'm not the birth certificate," or "Here's the birth certificate, judge. It's not me, and next, I'm going to give you, I'm going to endorse it, or I'm going to issue you with a bond. You can cash that in because the court case is a financial transaction, allegedly, which it isn't, by the way, but a lot of people believe it is. And you can buy your way out of court cases, according to a lot of people, by issuing the judge an endorsement on the birth certificate, because a lot of people claim that the birth certificate is a security, and you can hand it to the judge and endorse it and hand it over, and there you go, judge. Go and use that, and discharge the case. And by the way, take your wife out for a meal as well on on the security I've just given you. I'll give you some extra, or they'll write a promissory note out, or all manner of other variations on the theme. And of course, it doesn't work. So yeah, this agency and understanding how it's being wired up is pivotal. I have to be brutally honest. I've looked at nearly every system out there, and in the early years, in my early part of my journey, I actually thought, because I had researched people that claimed it worked for them, that you could separate yourself from the birth certificate construct. And I actually, in the early years of my journey, actually tried to use that living soul presentment and try and separate. Well, it didn't work for me. It's one of the reasons why I said it doesn't work, because it didn't work for me. And I was doing this at the highest level, not in a magistrate's court or a county court. I'm doing this in the high courts. It doesn't work. And my door is open to anyone who can bring the evidence of the constitutional argument working, the living man under God argument working, the no contract working, the bonding, the court case working. I'd love to see some evidence, if anybody's got some, of these things working, because I've looked everywhere. I can't find it. I don't think it exists. But it doesn't stop literally millions of people around the world believing all these things.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about silver lining then, because there is a way forward through all of this. And thank you guys for your comments. We've had some lovely comments coming through on the chat as well. A couple of questions before we kind of dig into the answer. We've got a question here from Pamela, who said, what's the status of a leaseholder who's paid off all money owed to the bank? Is there any point having this type of property with what you've already explained with this artificial contract?
Well, leasehold is, it's basically you've had a fixed term rental contract. You've funded it to the end of its term, and now you get to live there. In terms of the landlords, whoever they are, because I say the landlords, whoever owns the freehold of the property, they don't own it either, by the way. They have, it's like two titles rolled into one. basically you don't have to pay them rent anymore, which is what you were doing before. But ultimately, the freehold the legal title is held by the state, and that's why they can tax the property, and they'll dress it up as, all these different taxes that we're all paying. Basically, there will be an element of those taxes which is for property, either directly or indirectly, and that's how they get away with the tax system. So yeah, the leasehold is it's an interesting one, because when you get to the end of a lease and you've funded it all the way through, yeah, you can live there no problem, but you wouldn't be able to leave. You can't put that in trust and hand it over to your heirs, because they would want a new lease. Yeah. Those that think that they've got the legal title, they don't actually, but they will want a new lease. So it's better in many ways to have to avoid leasehold, to try and get the ultimate is to get fee simple, which we're going to talk about that in more detail coming soon, I think, because there's a lot of misunderstandings about allodial title, fee simple title, legal title, equitable title. There's all these different titles, and a lot of people don't really know the difference, don't even know what they are, many people. But we're going to break that down in one of our chats, I think, going forward. So
we are. So look out for that one, guys. Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about the silver lining. I want to talk about this reset as well, how you can take the wheels of this and actually build yourself a firewall moving forwards as well. So let's pivot to the solution, Ian, because people need a way out. Your framework focuses on within the Monopoly Game Changer, focuses also on something called the Envoy Protocol. So instead of fighting the courts, there is a way to step into a role of the general executor, or holding the office of the general executor of their decedent estate. Can you just explain what that is as well, and maybe also just clarify for people that this is not a separation from the birth certificate construct. This is just cleaning up the record and cleaning things up and cleaning up your standing moving forward, so that people understand what that is.
I think that I've got to say at this moment that there's no process that I've ever seen where you can engage in a process, whether it's documents, whether it's filings, UCC filings, very popular, status and standing correction. People in the redemption movement think that you can file UCC 1 and put a lien over the birth certificate construct, and the living man, woman has got superior creditor status, or you can file documents to the Secretary of State saying that you're not to be held liable for the birth certificate construct, or you can file affidavits. There's a group that I think they call themselves the People's Law of Terra Australis, and there's also the People's Law of Albion, same people but in the UK, who think that you can send an affidavit to various members of the state, the government, and now you're not responsible for anything that's going on a monopoly board. There's the Baron Ward affidavit as well. People think that you can send that out, and once you've sent this affidavit out, if it's not rebutted, then you can operate without any liability. You've severed your liability to the birth certificate construct. And there's all sorts of variations on that. There's people in the US who say, I'm a member of an indigenous tribe, the Moors, or some other indigenous tribe, and legislation doesn't apply to me because I'm over here as a member of the indigenous community over here. Or they say I'm a state national. I'm renouncing my citizenship. I'm going to operate as a state national, and all these assemblies that have been put together, and Anna von Reitz and many others similar to that. The problem with all of these things is that they just don't work. I'd love them to, but the bottom line is they don't work. No court recognises them. You won't find any court cases that people have won using any of those ideologies or any and others that I haven't listed. There is just no evidence of it working on the Monopoly board.
Yeah.
You see, if you're going to play Monopoly, you've got to play Monopoly using the rule book of the Monopoly game.
Yeah.
And what people are doing is they're going, look, hey, I'm over here as a living soul, and I want to play the Monopoly game the way I want to play it. And the way they want to play it isn't in the rule book.
No.
And then they say, well, it's all corrupt. And it's, you know, there's no justice. It's all corrupt because I want to play Monopoly my way, and the Monopoly board itself won't let me play the game the way I want to play it, and therefore it's got to be corrupt. It's got to be, you know, we've all been duped into it, and because we've all been duped into it, we can get ourselves out of it because we've all been defrauded, we've all been deceived, we've got no you know, no liability anymore because we've realized the deception, and we've sent some papers off to this state, you know, some guy in the state or some government figure, or we've joined in with these people over here, and you know, suddenly we're no longer liable. Well, the problem with it is that if you play Monopoly, you don't have much choice. You know, you either play Monopoly using the rules of Monopoly, or you create your own game and you go and play your own game of Monopoly somewhere else, which is what we're developing in our Freedom Plan. If you want to play outside of the Monopoly game, create your own game, create your own system, fantastic. Then you can have your own rulebook. But you can't play Monopoly using your rules that don't work on the Monopoly board itself and then say it's all corrupt. No. It's a bit like saying, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go and play rugby, but I'm going to play rugby as if it's football, because I want to play football on the rugby pitch. Well, the guys playing rugby are going to look at, if I ever did that, and they're going to say, hey, you can't play football in a rugby match. You have to play rugby. Yeah, or any other game. Yeah, you want to play American football and you want to turn up with a hockey stick, it's not going to work very well for you, is it? Nope. You might want to play hockey, but you're standing on a football field playing American football. So this is why a lot of people, you know, get very frustrated. They want to change the rules, but they don't even know what the rules are, and they're trying to play a game the way they want to play it that isn't in the rule book. So what you can do is you can play the game of Monopoly by the rules, which most people don't, because they don't know what they are. And if you play the game by the rules, if you play rugby with a rugby ball rather than a football, and you know, you actually play within the rules, then you've probably got a chance of winning. And that's all we're doing here, is showing people how to play the game of Monopoly using the rules of the game, which they don't know much about because no one's ever shown them. And the rules aren't that difficult, really. No. You've got to realise that you're the agent. You can't change it, but you can clean it up. You can operate as the, you can occupy the office as the general executor rather than the executive decentor. Yeah. That doesn't sever the tie. It doesn't mean that you're no longer responsible for the artificial construct, because you can't sever that tie. I've never seen anybody achieve it. So why not use it? Why not make it? Why not clean it up? Why not say, look, I'm not the birth certificate construct. I'll make a declaration. I am alive, because they actually presume that you're dead, because you never claimed that you were alive. That's the Sesquivet v Act 1666. So make that declaration that you're alive. Occupy the office of the of the decedent estate of the artificial construct as the general executor, great. You're still responsible for what the artificial construct is doing, but then use use a new player piece, which is the Foreign Grantors Trust or a ministry. Use a new player piece on the Monopoly board that you can now use that new player piece to play the game, where you've got the advantage because you can use a Foreign Grantors Trust, and that can become a creditor. So remember, we talked about redirect the taxes, and the only way you can get back your human energy is not the actual securities, but the taxes on the securities. Yep. Well, your Foreign Grantors Trust can get the taxes redirected to it. You can't redirect the taxes to the artificial construct of the birth certificate entity, but you can with the Foreign Grantors Trust. If you're running a business and you want to operate privately, then use a ministry and get donations rather than charge fees or whatever it is you're charging now. So these are all rules of the Monopoly game that you can invoke without breaching the rules, just playing within the rules, doing it peacefully. Redirecting taxes has got to be the biggest one that people should be doing. Holding assets in a Foreign Grantors Trust is very smart, because that's a way of getting assets out of the bankruptcy, because the bankruptcy and all of the titles, as we mentioned earlier, are all part of the bankruptcy. So your house, your car, your business registered to the state. Well, why not get all that stuff debt free and put it all into your Foreign Grantors Trust, and now you can leave it to your heirs. You can take it out of the bankruptcy. You can hold the proper title to it. You can hold the legal title to it. Now you've got generational wealth, and you can redirect taxes that the banks are paying for the use of your human energy, and you can acquire real assets with those tax redirection money of account. And you can buy substance, and you can hold substance assets like gold, silver, land, art, etc. in your Foreign Grantors Trust. So now you're playing Monopoly exactly how the game could be played at an advanced level. You're not going to war with anybody. No. You're not, going around being ultra frustrated that the game is unfair. You've just gone up a level, and you're just playing the game with more skill.
Yeah, no, that makes an awful lot of sense. People exhausting themselves through trying to sever this tie of agency, shouting in courtrooms and getting themselves into trouble with the council. All these things that we see, constant videos on social media about these type of things. It's exhausting, and it doesn't get them anywhere. It increases stress levels, it increases the problem, makes it worse, not better. So what we're saying is, look, stop trying to essentially cheat at Monopoly. Just play it at a better level. Play it the way it was designed to be played. We've got a question coming from one of the watchers here, one of the viewers here. As I understand, we can't break the agency to the birth certificate construct. So what do we do about digital ID? Do we accept it or not? What happens if we refuse digital ID? Well, I would say to that particular person, join us on Saturday this week, 10 a.m. Saturday morning, because digital ID is going to be the subject matter. How you can use the Monopoly Game Changer, how you can use what Ian's just said, this 98 series Foreign Grantor Trust with a private treasury bank account attached to it that does not require digital ID, does not require that you tell the bank what you want the money for, how much you want, when can I have it, and provide every possible form of ID before they even let you use that money. This is a complete shift in how you view banking as a whole. So if you want to learn how to avoid the digital ID trap when it comes to your money, then join us on Saturday, 10 a.m. UK time for that particular webinar, and that will all be answered for you. So I guess my question here, Ian, would be, well, once someone's corrected that status, So they've made that declaration, I am no longer executor de Sontor. I'm not the executor of the wrongs. I now hold the office of the general executor. I still have agency, but I'm going to represent the birth certificate construct in the right way, and I've cleaned that up. What happens next? I mean, can you explain, if somebody then begins this process, they have this envoy status, and they understand how that works, and then they go through the process of tax redirection on their mortgages, loans, credit cards, bank payments, and they have an asset fortress to be able to receive those taxes into. How does that build a firewall around that individual? What's the practicalities behind that?
What you're doing is, you put a new player piece on the monopoly board, which is the Foreign Grantors Trust. It could be a ministry if you're in the United States, because it works well for non-reporting. And your Foreign Grantors Trust, because of the way it's been constructed, can operate. Actually, you have two Foreign Grantors Trusts. You have one that's doing your tax filings, because you want to redirect the taxes to the Foreign Grantor Trust as what's known as the holder in due course of the instrument. So the bank payments, the mortgages, the loans, the credit cards that you've created through your signature in the past, they're all being held by investment banks somewhere, and the investment banks pay tax because the issuance of the negotiable instruments, a bank payment, a mortgage, a loan, a credit card, they're all negotiable instruments, and they all created through the signature. The signature has a zero value to it when it's first used, and then the banks create a high future value. So a mortgage of $1 million, you sign for the mortgage. When you sign, your signature is zero value. The future value of the mortgage is $1 million plus interest. So that the taxes that the banks are paying, they're going to pay 24% tax on the not just the face value of the mortgage, but all of the interest as well. So the mortgage itself, you can't redirect the mortgage, but you can redirect the taxes equal to the face value of the mortgage. Same with bank payments, same with loans and credit cards. And you can only do that through a Foreign Grantors Trust. And actually, I did a research paper yesterday, I think it was. Somebody asked, is it only the Foreign Grantors Trust that can operate as the holder in due course? Because that's pivotal. No holder in due course standing, no tax redirection, lots of problems. What a lot of people are not realizing, and I want to explain it, is that when you issue a negotiable instrument, it's a terminology, it's a bit of jargon. It's called inchoate. It's an inchoate, which inchoate means incomplete. So when you issue a negotiable instrument for $1 million, which is the mortgage in my example, that's an inchoate instrument, incomplete. It's a debt that has yet to be filled up. So if you're looking at it, everything in the system is based on money of account, accounting ledgers. What you've got is you've got a ledger with $1 million debt on one side, and you haven't got any credit on the other side. So the instrument is incomplete or inchoate. So what you're doing when you the Foreign Grantors Trust, when it files 1099 OID, listing that mortgage security inchoate negotiable instrument, what it's actually doing is filling it up. it has balanced it on the ledger. The debt on one side of the ledger has now been balanced on the other side of the ledger through the 1099 OID filing, has brought that ledger to zero. So the filing of 1099 OID does two things. The first is it discharges the negotiable instrument to a value of zero back to its original value. And it also enables the foreign grantor's trust to redirect taxes that has been paid on that negotiable instrument by the banks equal to the face value of the instrument, which in this case is the $1 million. So what you're doing, and if that was a mortgage which was in force, you've actually discharged the mortgage and redirected the taxes on the same $1 million mortgage. And you're doing it because the foreign grantor's trust can operate as a creditor. So remember the bankruptcy, there's debtors and creditors. So if you want to play the game of Monopoly better than you currently are playing it, get yourself a foreign grantor's trust that plays the game as a creditor.
Yep.
That's in the rules, yeah? The only entity that can operate as a creditor is the foreign grantor's trust. I did deep research on that yesterday. There's no other construct that can operate as a creditor, which is why they don't like giving them out so easily.
No,
because they know the power of them, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that everybody who's involved in trying to play Monopoly better needs to have a foreign grantor's trust for tax filing and another foreign grantor's trust for holding their assets and using the bank account connected to that second foreign grantor's trust as a private treasury to get round this digital ID, because the foreign grantor's trust is not the birth certificate construct. It's separate from it. So that's how you separate. Rather than going around saying, I'm not the birth certificate construct, no, what you do is you create another player piece on the Monopoly board that isn't you, that you play the game through it as the beneficiary of it. So it's now playing as a creditor on the Monopoly board, as opposed to using the birth certificate construct, which can only ever play the game as a debtor.
Yeah.
So you've now flipped the board, yeah? You're now playing the game as a creditor, redirecting taxes, being able to hold real assets in trust for the benefit of your family, still playing Monopoly, but not playing it as a debtor, playing it as a creditor.
So you've got a completely souped up playing piece here, guys. It's think of it like Mario. If you're into video games, you've just had a real big power up. That's what you've had. So you can do way more. You can jump higher. You can just play the game at a completely different level. But you are playing the game. You're playing it to the rules of the game, which is non-confrontational, peaceful. This is what we talk about here at the Republic of Old Souls: being peaceful, being non-confrontational, causing no harm. So, rather than battling it out in the courts or with debt collectors or with the police at the side of your home, trying to save your car from being repossessed because you haven't paid your council tax or whatever it may be, this is just a much smarter way of doing it. So before we kind of wrap things up, Ian, there's one question that we've had. Nick's asked a question in the chat to do with the envoy status as well. And he said that I'm currently living in the UK with a UK passport. Once I become an envoy, can I legally live abroad in Spain, for example?
Well, you see, it again, what is Spain? Well, Spain is an artificial construct, yeah? Yeah. The United Kingdom, an artificial construct. When you move across borders, the living soul, the agent for the birth certificate construct that's got the passport, is going to move, and then the artificial constructs, and I lived in Spain for a couple of years, you're going to need a visa. Is the visa for the living soul, or is the visa for the artificial construct? No, it's for the artificial construct. So you're going to need a visa. Nothing changes. Does the Envoy protocol give you some special visa? No. Is it going to help you to avoid having a visa? No. The game of Monopoly is the same. But what you've done, the Envoy, there's two things that you've done. Basically, you because you have cleaned up this office, which was an you were operating as the executive de Sontor, now the general executor. But what you've also done is that you've made a declaration that you are an envoy for a ministry.
Yeah.
Now, that gives you a different standing on the Monopoly board. If you then add into the equation a foreign grantors trust and you're as a creditor entity, what you've now got is you've got a cleaned up birth certificate construct. You are a envoy for a ministry because you believe in operating as a creditor peacefully. That's your belief, right?
Yeah.
That's anybody can believe whatever they want to believe, and your ministry believes in operating as a creditor in peace. That's your belief if you believe it. So you can have that. You can be an envoy. You can be a minister. So that gives you a little bit of a standing, and gives you some more rights on the Monopoly board than you wouldn't have had those rights if you weren't an envoy. So that's the first thing. It gives you a little bit more elevated standing, but it also means that when you create the foreign grantors trust, the grantor is the birth certificate construct.
Yes.
So you don't want to be creating the foreign grantors trust, operating the office of the general executor, the executive de Sontor. You want to be operating the office as the general executor because you want to create the foreign grantors trust without any blemishes or any identity fraud or anything like that. It's an important point that you are creating the foreign grantors trust clean, with a clean grantor, as opposed to a grantor that is labelled in the system as an executive de Sontor.
Yeah. No, that is important. Think of it if you were, I don't know, let's go back to the car analogy. I seem to like the car analogy, but if you were restoring a vehicle, there's not much point in you sanding the car down if there's a big rusty spot there and then just spraying that over with your spray paint and putting a new coat of paint on there. Might look nice for a while, but sooner or later that rust is going to start to eat through again. So really important that when you construct this 98 grantor trust, that it's done in the right way, that the standing is cleaned up, the rust has been removed, the wrongs have been removed, and that you're moving forwards with a nice clean slate so that it stays the test of time. Might be fine for a while, but you really don't want there to be any doubt or any chinks in that armor. And that is exactly what the envoy status will do for you. So, guys, I think it's been a great session today. We've had a great number of people on live with us, so appreciate you joining us live. When it comes to next steps, let's just talk about what we would like to offer you guys who are here with us on the live session. We've had some comments come through from many of you. You've been very, very appreciative of the content, so thank you so much for that. But if this is making sense, and you would like to move forwards with the Monopoly Game Changer, which will give you what Ian has said, it will give you that envoy status, that clean standing over the birth certificate construct. It will give you a 98 series foreign grantor trust that can be used for the filing of the paperwork for the tax redirection. And that can be on mortgages, loans, credit cards, bank payments, going back to the age of 18, and you can reclaim taxes up to $2 million per year with the IRS. And what it will also do is it will give you a secondary 98 grantor trust that acts as your private treasury, so that when that tax redirection comes back in, you've got a private bank account as the beneficiary and a bank card to use that and put that back out into the system again. Use it on your living, use it to buy assets, use it to buy a property, use it for cost of living, whatever you want to use that bank account for. It is your private treasury. It is not subject to digital ID or any of the current banking constraints that we all seem to be falling under right now. So you've got the ability to have that entire package put together for you. And what we want to do is, for everybody that's on the live today, if you are ready to move forwards, if you have the financial means to move forwards and you want to do this, bearing in mind that when you make a donation, that donation can be recouped as part of that tax redirection. So ultimately, this doesn't cost you anything. Looks like we've lost Ian for a second. So let me just wrap this up for you guys. I know his internet is sometimes a little bit dodgy, and he is subject to some power cuts as well over there. But let's just wrap this up. If you want to benefit from that, then there is a 20% discount. So here's what I want you to do, okay? There's a fast action discount, 20%. All we want you to do is support what we are doing here at the Republic of Old Souls. So like and share and comment the word start on the social media platforms. Not much point you commenting that here on StreamYard, because StreamYard is our internal system that we're using here. But in terms of moving forwards with the socials, like, share, and comment the word start. And then what you want to do is you want to click the link that is in the chat that I'm going to post for you now. We have a unique link that you can click on that will allow you to book a consultation with one of the team here, and they will help you get started. So here's the link on screen. I'm also going to post this in the chat as well for you guys. So let me do that, because it's a little bit of a confusing link, not something that you're going to remember. So I'm going to grab this link now and I'm going to post it here in the chat. This is going to go live across the socials when I post it, because it will post across all the channels. So let me do that. You can grab this link, and you've got, guys, until 10 p.m. tonight to book a call with one of the consultant team. If you book by 10 o'clock tonight, and the consultants are well aware that this is happening, they have made some space within their calendar to accommodate you guys as well. So you've got to be serious about this, because our consultants have moved their calendars around to open up space to allow you to book by 10 o'clock tonight. All right. Once you've got that booking in place, there will be what's called a one-time passcode. So an OTP, if you're not familiar with an OTP, it's simply a booking system algorithm that wants to make sure that you are real. So when you book your call, you'll get a passcode that will come through. You put that passcode in, book the call, and then you're good to go with one of the consultants. If you do those things before 10 p.m. tonight, like and share the content, comment in the chat like I mentioned to you guys earlier. So I want you to comment the word start and then book your call before 10 p.m. tonight. You will receive 20% off the donation for the Monopoly Game Changer. All right, so the link is in the chat for you there. Before we kind of move on, Ian, any final thoughts from yourself? I know we lost you for a second, but I was just going through the offer for people.
Yeah, I had a power cut, which normally lasts a few hours, but it only lasted about 30 seconds, so that was quite bizarre. But anyway, hopefully it won't go off again. The avatar, the Ian Clifford avatar, is very near to being available, and if you want to use that or spread the word, if you want to get other people interested in what we're doing, there's an opportunity for you to share it with others that you know. You get rewards points for doing that, $100 of rewards points that you can use to offset against any protocols that we are going to launch going forward. Okay. You can also use it against the Monopoly Game Changer if you're wanting to discount down your enrollment, and if your budget's tight, that's an opportunity for you there. And get people to the webinar. You could also use a webinar link to get people to come to the flagship Saturday webinars that I do every Saturday. And then if you really want to create a passive income stream, become an advocate.
Yeah.
And start spreading the word using the webinar link, using the avatar link. And anyone who enrolls, you're going to get a share of the enrollment donation. And more importantly, you're going to get a share of the tax redirection for everybody that you introduce. So that's, I've looked at a lot of, affiliate programs and multi-level marketing programs. Ours is way, way more attractive because of the share of the tax redirection that you can get going forward. So if you introduced 50 people, you've got a share of 50 tax redirections every year coming to you.
Yeah.
And all you do is share the link to the avatar or the webinar.
Exactly. Can you imagine if those 50 people each redirected 2 million a year? Just think about that. Yeah, that's 100 million. And you get a share of it. Yeah, absolutely amazing. So guys,
it's all these things are available, but you've got to do something about it. You've got to take action. So.
Yeah, and that's what we've always said. Knowledge is great, knowledge is powerful, but it's only powerful if you take action. Without action, it's pretty useless, really. So if you want to take action, you've got the link there. Let me post it one more time in the comments for you guys so that there's no ambiguity. So that's now going out across the socials, YouTube, Facebook. Hopefully you've got that link there, guys. Okay, so it's the lvfree.is link. That is a unique link for today. You'll see today's date at the end, Thursday, 16th of July, 26. So you can see that. If you use that link to book, you will receive a 20% discount off the donation. And as Ian's already mentioned, there's many other ways that you can get involved here at the Republic of Old Souls. If you want to join us on Saturday for the digital ID webinar and understand a little bit more about how the protocols here can help you avoid digital ID when it comes to tax redirection and using a bank account that is private, that doesn't have all the constraints of your high street banks, then you can register here at roswebinars.is and you'll be able to join us on Saturday. If you're loving Ian's papers and you want to get real technical, then go to ecclesialaw.is and you'll see 60 to 70 of Ian's reports giving you a full breakdown, not just on what this is, but how it works and why it works as well. Really important that you understand those factors. And if you like more of this type of content, then you can see more of our recorded content on the ROS Media platform as well. We'd love to have you there. You can make your own account. You can build yourself a playlist. You can browse the different sections that we have there. I'm continually now looking and doing some more research into the Freedom Plan. We've found some incredible stuff to do with water and energy. So I'm going to be posting some content there to do with that you guys can look into as well. There's just lots that you can get involved with here. But ultimately, if you want to change the situation that you find yourself in, the very first thing you need to do is get involved in the protocols. That is the paramount thing you want to be doing. Get yourself involved in the Monopoly Game Changer. Get that underway with one of the consultants. And you've got till 10 p.m. tonight to get that 20% discount. So it's been great to have you on with us today. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. We'll be back again next Thursday. Hopefully we'll be doing another live. I'm actually going away with my family for a family break. So we'll figure something out where we can maybe do a live while I'm away as well. That would be fantastic. So we want to keep this momentum going. But until the next time, have a fantastic day and we will talk to you soon. Bye for now, guys.